Welcome to TechTalk Podcasts by CERT's IT Service Solutions. In this episode, we discuss the changing role of the CIO. Our host, John Granger, invites CIO Marie Banks to explore the roadmap of a CIO, how a CIO can effectively collaborate with other CIOs, and women in tech. Let's dive into part one.
Excellent. Okay, so welcome everyone to another edition with CERTs, and I'm really excited. We've got Marie Banks, and you've got two for the price of one on this session because you've got two CIOs or CTOs. I'm a CTO. I have been a CIO. Marie is a CIO, and I'm sure we'll get into all the IOs and what does that all mean. Just tell us a little bit about Marie Banks and how on earth and why on earth did you get into the CIO?
So I've recently stepped into the group CIO position here at Croda. And for those that don't know, Croda is a global manufacturing organization of ingredients that go into either consumer care products, so products that go on your body, so hair care, skin care, sun care, or products that go into your body, ingredients that go into your body. So traditionally in pharma, inside vaccines and things, or actually seed enhancement, kind of crop care technology. So quite an unusual market sector. I absolutely love what I do. I love the breadth and the variety of what I do as a CIO. I love the ability to create change, successful, meaningful, lasting change, to drive, I call it positive disruption. I think I just like being at the heart of causing chaos, if I'm honest. But I love the fact that you can disrupt how things are done. And I see my job and the decisions that I make is to try and look at the opportunities and challenges that the business faces and how we solve those with technology. And sometimes, I think back to my previous role, I worked for a logistics business. Sometimes it's a problem that you don't conventionally associate with technology. So I love complex problems. And I think that's the world of a CIO, is to understand complex problems, understand the art of the possible, connect dots. So I've seen something amazing over here, and actually it can solve a problem over here. I had a really wonderful case in my previous organization where we connected the technology that was used in a farming environment to identify hazards and brought that into a railway environment. Totally different utilization of technology, but you're starting to think about, we've got a problem here, and actually I've seen something over here that works really well in that space. Can we connect those? How does that work? And so being around people that raise my bar, give me challenges or opportunities to stretch how we can do things, I absolutely love.
So a couple of things. So I'm now getting jealous because I do something similar, but not in manufacturing. But I did cut my teeth in manufacturing. And I learned about bill of materials and about in manufacturing, you have everything. Everything happens in manufacturing. Every other business model you go to or industry has a bit of what was in manufacturing, but manufacturing has everything. I remember just being totally humbled by watching someone put something on paper and then it coming out the other end. But the bit that really impressed me was, and this is a few years out of date, Marie, so apologies, but they used to be called production engineers, and they were the guys and girls who would take the kind of the idea and go, right, how do we make this?
Yep.
A bit like, on the telly, there's those programs where they show, how they make chocolates, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the production engineering of how you sort of put it together. And I'm just wondering, you're talking about connecting the dots. It dawned on me the other day that as CIO, CTO, you are actually placed in a unique position. You're kind of thrown in to the middle of all these dots. So there is a little bit. Sometimes when you make a connection, do you sometimes think, well, actually that's quite obvious, but actually realize it's because it's the way you're looking at the problem or positionally, which I think is a bit of a privilege for us.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a very trusted position. and I think a really privileged position. There's very few areas that get to have that helicopter view of not just your organizational landscape, but working with peer-to-peer connects, how other industries and organizations are operating. Um, I think it also helps with your bit. I'm inherently nosy. I like to poke my nose in places. So I am curious when I see something or I hear somebody says, oh, there's a problem here, or I've seen this, there's an opportunity here. So I think that curiosity and that passion to disrupt create a really hotbed. And when you have the CIO's view of an organization and its ecosystem, I think it really is a privilege to be able
Yes.
to look at how you bring all that together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Okay, so you said it was an unconventional route. Before we get into that, you mentioned, we're in different sectors at the moment. From your perspective, do you have a preference to work with CIOs that are in non-competing other sectors to kind of get a different angle? And conversely, do you find it sometimes a bit not risky, but you've just got to be careful if you work with a CIO in the same sector, because we have such a wide view of
Yeah.
everything. It's kind of like CEOs meeting and
Yeah.
discussing, you've got to be careful.
I maybe have a different view on this to most. So my previous organization was logistics, and logistics do something really, really well. And rail, specifically rail. Rail do something really, really well where they collaborate very closely on safety.
Of
So
course.
it's a shared knowledge. It's even sometimes shared resources. And one of the things that I observed was that they move mountains. They do amazing things because they share knowledge, because and even when incidents happen, they share what happened. When I first got my CIO position, I thought, and I was relatively new to being a CIO. I'd worked in and around technology as program director, but I'd not really done CIO before. And I was thinking, I need to learn here. I need to learn quickly. I need to understand what good looks like. I need to understand what other people are doing. And I did something quite unusual. I got the CIOs from all my competitors. We all got together. And I said, there will be areas that we can't discuss, that we don't want to discuss. Absolutely, that's fine. But I guarantee there will be things that we can do, that we can share. Really good example. And you only need to find one or two to make the magic happen. And often that's around cyber. So information security, protection, because that's kind of what safety operates the principle on. So we started to look at that. But also, I think there are quite often you're working with similar suppliers, similar vendors, and actually there's a natural ability to help each other and understand, what have you done? How are you doing that? So I firmly believe that collaboration is better than not. Clearly, there's a framework around how you work out how you collaborate. So I think that collaboration inter-industry is really important. I think it's really important that an industry grows that way. And I think we have
Yes.
a responsibility to drive innovation. That said, I think phenomenal things happen when you connect outer industry. So I used to challenge my team, and still do, to look for innovation that they see in everyday life. So find something that you see that you think is brilliant, but particularly from a customer experience, because we can all learn from the most amazing people in the world that create amazing customer experiences. But find something that you see in everyday life and you think that's absolutely amazing. Honestly, I can't believe I didn't. Apple do it brilliantly. They come up with features that you had no idea you needed until they invent them, and then you think, how did I live without that? And I challenge the team to do that, to go out in day-to-day life. And if you see something, and we had a challenge where we were looking at how we ended the customer relationship. So on a transactional relationship, what do we give? And normally we give an invoice, and it's quite a negative end to a relationship, isn't it? And I'd said to the team, think about, famous airline, and you land and then they make a trumpet sound and they say, oh, 99% of our aeroplanes land on time. And you think, oh man, I was on the one that was late. But you've got a really positive feeling because you've psychologically, you know that 99% land on time. We ended up looking at something that one of the teams saw in a petrol station when they filled up the car, and it told them how much carbon they saved. And I was like, can we build a carbon statement that tells our customers how much carbon they saved when they transited product by rail? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. So I think there's amazing
Yeah.
things when you can take outer
Yeah.
industry comparisons, and
Yeah.
either with your peers or
Yeah.
with industries that you don't normally work with, because we're all telling a story, aren't we? That's the CIO's job, is tell a story.
It's the point where I think, I'm just not as unique and different and innovative as I thought I was, because I completely agree with you on all those points. The way I would put it is, there is this kind of, the first rule of SOC Club is don't talk about SOC Club. So any cyber invitation, especially if it's just someone who's rung you up and says, what's your security setup, you should just put the phone down. So you've got to be careful what forum. But actually, I think going back to manufacturing, this might not still happen, but Mercedes, I think, was famous for sharing safety within the motor industry, because it's to everyone's advantage. So I think that point you make about sharing cyber practice is absolutely right. On the innovation side, that's the bit where I probably don't collaborate as much as maybe I should, because there is an argument that says it's fine to share ideas because it's all about execution. That's what makes the difference, which is true. But I love to lean into other sectors and try and find stuff in the customer service space, particularly, that might transpose really well into how, we support our users.
Yeah, 100%. And you can do amazing innovations and provide a really bad service, can't you, to your internal customers? So it is about a blend of doing things that help us today, and that continuous improvement, turning the radio dial on innovation. But also there's groundbreaking things that really do disrupt how we do what we do.
But I want to get back into this unusual route into the CIO. So you're either about to say, so you were driving a train, you got to York Station, Doncaster, apologies, you got out and you just saw a CIO advert and you went in, and that's how it happened. So I think you've mentioned transport sector.
Yes.
So what were you doing there, and what was your move into, what was drawing you into CIO? Just before you say anything further, I mean, I got one of my jobs early on in my career, which turned out to be massively important, literally by sitting next to someone on an airplane.
Oh, wow.
Like a complete kind of sliding doors sort of thing. But so go on then, Mary. I think we've got everyone's on the edge of their chairs singing. How is this story going to?
Oh, it definitely wasn't a train driver.
Okay.
However,
I'm sorry, I'm a bit disappointed now.
Yeah, I know. It just feel like it's going to lackluster now when I tell the story. So I come from a commercial background. So my role was in sales, key account management, driving revenue. I then moved into program management, project management, program director type roles, transformational change roles. Naturally, because I'm curious by nature and I like to look at how we can improve things where technology can support. But I always start, whenever I talk to people, I always start with a point that is, well, I'm quite technologically illiterate. I have to go back to basic things. How does this work? What does it do? Why do we need it? And I think it talks a lot to the changing shape of a CIO's role. So I've been a CIO probably for the last 10, 15 years, but interestingly, I think what's changed, when I first took the CIO role, it was really unusual to be a CIO without a technology background, without a programming discipline or an engineering discipline. And it took me ages to learn about technology. It doesn't come naturally to me. I have to really ask those stupid questions till I learn, till I build my knowledge. But what I do have, because of my commercial background, is a real great understanding of why we do what we do, how we delight a customer, how we drive value, what's the return on investment for this, supplier management, creating good relationships. And actually, if I think about the changing position of what I think a good CIO is, it's that person that can articulate value, that can understand how we do what we do. How do we do it better? How do we improve on that? How do we make something more efficient, more effective? And it's all those good traits that I learned in a commercial background that actually fit so well with the relationship of a CIO today within business, and where you can take relationships, because it's all about relationships, whether it's with your your exec, your board, your senior peer group, whether that's with your employees and how you communicate your messaging, or whether that's with your your wider network, your suppliers, your customers, or even innovation funders, and how you generate income to invest in new
Yeah,
technology.
absolutely.
So I think, whilst unconventional, it's probably set me up on. I joined at a point when the CIO role was changing, and particularly in the business where I got my first CIO role, the logistics business, when that business wanted to look at how do we do business differently and how can we leverage technology to do that. And I have a huge passion for that. So I do think it's right place at right time. I think that counts. And sitting next to someone on a plane, absolutely. But I also think it's about your personality and your thirst for knowledge, and I've and your ability to have a go. You talked about people wanting to become a CIO. You're
Yeah.
only bound by your own capabilities or your own ceiling.
Yes. So I probably heard this somewhere and pretended I made it up myself, but I love the definition that luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Oh, that's
And I
fact.
actually think bad luck is when opportunity arrives and you're not prepared for it, because then you're getting into the what would have happened,
Yeah,
what could have, should have kind of space.
absolutely.
On the commercial side, I agree with you. My own background is originally computer science, but then I did an MBA, and I did that very deliberately. I was consulting for some of the the normal names. That's what I've done for a big part of my career. But I was thinking, well, actually, I don't want to go into the technology pigeonhole, but I want to be able to understand it. Your fundamental instincts to ask the basic questions doesn't really change, in my opinion, with technology knowledge, because what you often uncover is some old assumptions or decisions that were made without the right set of information around them, or the context has changed. So actually asking really, really basic questions, I think, is really key. Maybe not a can someone tell me again where the toilet is? I don't mean that kind of basic question that might indicate other challenges, but they're kind of, let's go through the fundamentals. And I think also when you're asking those sorts of questions, and I think what you're doing, Marie, is you're displaying confidence.
Yeah.
You're showing the rest of the team that you're very comfortable with your position. You're very
Yeah.
comfortable to ask that question. But I'm wondering also, is that also giving the rest of the team that, the wrong word, I'm going to use the wrong word, but the permission to act like that? We talk about
Yeah.
psychological safety and creating that kind of,
Absolutely.
how important is that for you and, your experience of managing teams? Because I think what we
Oh,
do is,
hugely.
a big part of this is leadership. And I think a big part of
Absolutely.
leadership is our responsibility to create the right environment. So how important do you think the environment is that the CIO creates? And maybe tell us a bit about, what sort of environment you set up.
I think it's all about authentic leadership. I am who I am. I've got the skills that I've got. I've got the opportunities to grow that I've got. And I think it's about understanding that. It's about understanding your fit with the people around you. Um, I'm quite an emotive person. So I know if someone comes with bad news to me, I will have a natural response to respond a certain way. So I think it's about being able to articulate that to your team and say, I might not get it right first time. I might come when you tell me something. I might not hear you. And so I need you to give me feedback when that happens, so I don't do that. But I also think it's about having openness and transparency. Now, as sometimes you can't have that. Sometimes you're doing things that you just don't have the ability to do that on. But even being able to say, I'm sorry, there is something there, but I can't really talk about that right now. But as soon as I can, we'll build that confidence, or that communication. I think fundamentally you have to be open to say, I don't know. I will find out. Can you tell me more on that? I think you have to be open to hear the good and the bad and the ugly, because that happens in every business, that happens in every function. And you can't change what you don't know. And I think that's a really important thing. I think I learned a lot through my personal life. My daughter suffered from quite a lot of mental health issues, and it really broadened my horizon on different people work and learn different ways. I think I was probably a very one-dimensional leader at that point, and the ability to understand how you communicate, how you interact, how open you are to receive as well as give information, I think is really important. And I'm a big believer in engagement and fun. And you can't see it at the minute, but on the chair behind me is and this will not translate to some people that are listening to the podcast. I'm going to apologize now. I heard a really wonderful story from somebody how they engaged their people to call out success. It was something I was trying to bring to the team at the time. And we have a pat on the back t-shirt, and it has a picture of an actress who was in a soap opera in the UK called Pat Butcher. And I used to give the t-shirt to the team, a team member who'd done something amazing. There's a pat on the back.
Very good.
Now, it motivated them, but completely in the wrong way, because nobody wanted the t-shirt. So they were absolutely motivated to call out other members of the team that had done amazing things to have the right desired effect, but just for a very different reason. But I love things like that, where you can call success, because I think success breeds success.
How did you discover? So the being authentic, 100%. I think also if you tell people that, you tell people in your team, be authentic, you're actually telling everyone that you want them to be themselves.
Yeah.
Which is a really powerful message. It's not like, I want you to watch me and pretend to be me.
Yeah.
And then if you are exactly like me, you'll do really well, which is just ridiculous. But I think people sometimes think that's the route, because someone told me once, when you look upwards in your career, it's like the next stage is like almost you can't quite see through it. It's like a really, really dark smoked glass.
Yeah.
But if you look sideways to all the other moves you've made, it's completely obvious and transparent. So you have to remember people are kind of in that position.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, did you meet anyone? Did someone tap you on the shoulder and say, Marie, you need to be authentic, or you be comfortable in your own shoes, or maybe look at more management styles, listening styles, leadership styles? Because a lot of what I've got through the years has been sort of, I think the posh way of saying it is autodidactic, remembering from my history A level in, I don't know, 1872 when I did history. But the kind of self-teaching stuff.
Yeah.
But then there was also some people, for me, I definitely look back and say, right, I'm never going to lead the team like that person, but they taught me a lot and I respect them for
100%.
it. Did you have any mentors, any examples? And look, I don't want to go into the cliche, but there is the women in tech are not as common. Yeah. It's, if you think about the population is properly normally distributed 50% each way.
Yeah.
So it should really be, and so is intelligence and everything else.
Yeah.
And we're nowhere near those sorts of ratios, although I'm very proud where I'm at, we're not far off it, but that's also not by like deliberate design. It's just it's great. It's happening.
Yeah, how it's happened.
But I'm just wondering, your mentoring. We'll get into who you might be mentoring, but have you had any profound moments that's helped you in that route?
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of several people in my career that have really influenced how I've approached what I've approached. I worked for an amazing CEO who gave me some very wide goalposts, which was brilliant for me. I don't like having my wings clipped. I like to explore. I like to fly and learn. And that was really fundamental when I got my first CIO role. That he gave me that freedom to operate. I've worked with people that haven't realized are mentoring me at the time. You gave an example about, I probably can think about one of the hardest jobs I've ever done, and I really disliked it at the time I was doing it. And I was working in a commercial role. But if you ask me where have I learned the most in my career, it would have been in that role. So, and I can think of a colleague. I don't work with her now, but we still speak. And I would say, I was going to say a mentor, or I don't mentor. I think actually it's a reverse mentorship, if I'm honest. And she reads a lot. And she would often say, I might talk about something, and she would say, have you read this? This is a really good example of that in life. Or it's, she told me about a book, and it's probably one of the most, when you read something and it really just hits you. And it was the chimp paradox. And I've realized I've got a nightmare chimp inside me who just goes rife sometimes. And we must have been talking about my response to something. And she told me about the book. And so there are moments like that change how you do what you do, but some of them you don't realize at the time you come to because you reflect. And then I think I mentioned my mum earlier on, and I probably feels like really cliche to say this, but my mum was a single parent. She must have worked 2 or 3 jobs. She had a super high work ethic, and I think that rubs off on you. I'm actually not sure it does, because it doesn't seem to be rubbing off on my children, but there you go. Maybe there's a generational thing there with them, but I don't know. But she really she gave me such a high standard. She set such a high bar. She didn't work in a professional role, but her work ethic, her determination, her drive was just phenomenal. I remember once when we were growing up, my grandma was German, and we'd lost touch with the German side of the family. Nobody spoke German. She said, "Jump in the car. We're going to drive to Germany and find them." And I remember thinking at the time, we don't know where we're going or how that works, but it didn't faze her. So I like to think some of that kind of spirit is I've picked up from her. But yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to have brilliant people.